everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wrist Cheese Radio Podcast, your place for horological hot takes, taboo topics, and often unpopular watch opinions. My name is Schmidt, and as always, I'm joined by my good buddy. You guys know him, you love him, Mr. Bro Dinky. What's going on, my friend?
Schmidt, what's good, bud? Having a nice little weekend. Worked pretty late last night, but
Okay.
thanks to that, I wound up with a little day off today. We had a half day, so the boss was kind enough with the busy week coming up and everything. Said, "Why don't you take tomorrow?" Which is good because I got two little sick guys, so I haven't been getting a lot of sleep, and my shoulder is killing me from carrying children around because they're grown boys, and now that they're both up above like the 30-pound mark, oh my gosh, I feel like I just threw like a 9 inning game, and it's not good, not good. But I'm alive. I'm here. I'm ready to record. Yeah, and I might even have a little NWA on the way, which would be nice.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, nothing crazy, nothing crazy. Just a fun little something that I've always had my eye on that popped up at a good price. So we'll see. We'll see if it's a legit situation when it arrives. But keep an eye out for that. How's everything on your end?
Oh, it's good, man. Wife's doing good, baby's doing good. Did some holiday decorations today. So before we jumped
Christmas?
on yeah, before we jumped on to record this, it's all Christmas at my house right now, so everything's kind of everywhere, but uh really fun. Kids number one is more in the spirit this year. She's more aware of what's going on, so that's kind of fun.
Yeah, that's great.
So she's getting more excited about seeing Santa and all that stuff. So can't wait for that. It's
And
gonna be
even
fun.
better, now you can use the old Santa threat, right? Santa's always watching.
Oh yeah.
Whenever they throw in a temper tantrum, Santa's watching, kid. Don't mess this
Oh
up. Don't
oh
mess up
yeah.
this year's
And
presents.
now this year we have the elf on the shelf
Oh,
to
me too. Yeah.
further reinforce the Santa-ness. So I can't wait for that. So we'll see how it goes. It's hiding in my office closet right now, but I'm gonna pull him out and we'll see what that is.
Very good. Very good. Okay. As we do on the show, we'll kick off with some new releases. And I guess going back to last week where I knew nothing about any of those releases, I'm going to keep going with that. And I've never heard of this brand, but this was a neat little release that I came across. It's the Excelsior Park
Yes.
EP 5003 chronograph. I originally came across this because at first I thought it was actually a Nevada because they
Yeah.
they do these with a funny little secondhand sometimes on them. With I think they had like a it wasn't a Pac-Man, it was a pixelated character like a jellyfish or something on one of their depth masters, I think. But they do stuff like this, so I thought maybe it was in Nevada. But it's this brand Excelsior Park, and I guess this is a collaboration with now pardon me here, Monsieur Romaret Andre. I don't know who that is, but apparently he's
Okay.
rather famous and he's an artist and he's also known for whatever the heck Seconda is. I don't know what that is either. I'm sure you do.
No, man.
No,
I
then
really, yeah, I really don't.
look, if the Schmidt doesn't know, it doesn't exist as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, apparently he's a very famous designer and he does these limited collabs with companies. And so he did this with them. This is called, he's got it as the out of the park and instead of Excelsior Park. And I guess the inspiration behind it was he took the name Excelsior, meaning above, and the name Park, and he likened it to baseball and said, well, if
I
it's
see.
up above the park, it's out of the park, and so that's why it's got a little. It looks like they taped over the name and it says out of the park instead of Excelsior Park on the dial.
Okay.
Cool little watch, 39 mils by 13 thick
Okay, so
for
that's right in your specs.
yeah, not bad at all. SW 510 movement, $2,100.
Okay.
All right, so not cheap. I guess you're really gonna want it if you're going after it, and it's also a
Yeah.
limited edition of 30 pieces. And I think it went on sale today, if I'm not mistaken.
Is
We're
this a
recording Sunday.
yeah, we're recording sense. This is a baseball motif,
Yeah,
not cricket, right?
I saw the hand, and I thought it was an homage to vintage video games. I thought that was a sword. I thought
Okay,
that was
because
like a
that's what I
Zelda
thought
sword.
first. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought first. I thought it was a Zelda sword,
And then I saw
but it's
next to
not.
it,
Okay.
that's clearly a baseball, even though it
Yeah.
kind of reads Mario Mushroom to me, but fine.
Yes.
But so yeah, it does also look like a cricket bat. I did read an article about it where somebody said that might be like a sort of backhanded slap in some way, shape, or form. I'm not really buying that, but
Yeah.
I guess it's a baseball bat, and the
Okay.
register to the right of it is the baseball. It's a 30-minute chrono, I believe. Cool little package, interesting motif. Uh I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it. I don't chase things like this, even though I love retro video games and pixelated fun.
Yeah, this is so like Nevada's really the one that kind of started this whole thing. And I think even Moser jumped in on something very
I
similar to
could see them
this.
doing that. Yeah.
And I think it was like a limited edition, if my memory is serving me correctly. Somebody will comment on it if I'm wrong in the chat, but or the comments I should say. But this feels very Nevada to me. I don't know if I'm running out to buy one. I'm sure somebody who is a baseball fan or lover will like it. It feels very for me. It feels very. I don't know. I don't think force is the right word, but
Falls flat.
I, just, I don't know why I would buy this. That's kind of what I'm getting at. I don't know why, and I like baseball.
I
I
agree.
grew
I'm
up
a
playing
baseball fan as
baseball,
well. Yeah.
but I don't know why I would want to buy this because nowhere in my life I'm like, you know what? I'm going to Wrigley today, or I'm going to go to Met Stadium, or the Yankees Stadium, and I'm going to wear this. You know what I mean? Like it seems kind of like a novelty thing. But look, somebody's gonna buy it. It's an LE. All these LEs today, they all sell out. It's one of those things. It just they're always gonna move products, so it's for somebody, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so too. And I'm a rather big baseball fan. Like I grew up playing baseball my whole life. I'm still outraged that the comment section on Hodinky when they wrote that article with referring to Shohei Otani and everybody's like, who the heck is that? I'm still
Yeah.
disgusted by the comment section. But regardless, I'm not really running out to grab this one. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
not a bad looking watch. It's
No,
just
it's not. And,
it
and
does feel weird. It feels
and
weird.
it's and this is, I guess, from what I've been because like you, I didn't really know much about this brand. I guess Fertel has written a few articles on them over the last year or so, but not anything that caught my attention because honestly, I would have saw this and went like, "That's a vintage watch," and just kept scrolling.
Right.
For me. So I think if you're looking for a watch that feels very, very vintage, especially given the specs, this is that. And according to the articles and just my kind of cursory glance, this was an established brand that has like a vintage following. Excelsior Park was doing some other stuff. It's an interesting name, but apparently it was a very established brand at one point, and they made movements before. So I guess somebody kind of is relaunching them, is what I'm understanding.
Okay.
So it's kind of like that Doxa,
Yeah.
that kind
Yeah.
of
We talk
like
about that a lot.
exactly. So but they're focusing on like manual wine, kind of that by compacts type of look
Sure.
for Chrono.
And I guess this guy, he mods vintage watches normally. So I guess this collab comes full circle a little bit.
Okay, that makes sense.
But yeah. Next up, Tag Heuer dropping a chrono in solid 18 karat gold, the black and gold Carrera. This is the 42 millimeter version, not the gigantic 44. So I guess good start there.
Yep.
Allegedly a tribute to Formula One legend Ayrton Senna.
Oh yeah, Senna.
So he apparently drove this Lotus. It was the 98T, and I guess it must have had some sort of a similar color motif. I'm not a big F1 person. I know who the bigger players are, like Hamilton and people like that, but I don't watch every race or anything. It intrigues me, but I'm not a super fan or anything. So apparently, this is a nod to him and his car. It's got the Hoyer Caliber 02, comes in around $20,000 for a gold watch. I guess that would be expected,
Yeah,
right?
that's a pretty average price point for
Yeah,
for
I
a
don't think
solid gold
that's
watch.
outrageous for solid gold. I don't know. I don't know who's buying it. I guess if you're a huge fan of his or a huge fan of Tag Heuer and you want something flashy, you go nuts.
Yeah, I think this is that. I mean, this is for most people that are buying Hoyers, this is a little bit outside of their price point. But I think, Tag is really starting to celebrate a lot of stuff. Maybe they're making some upmarket moves in some respects. And, this is kind of an anniversary type thing. Why not do something that's a little bit more special, especially for such a prominent F1 driver like Senna. Um, that guy was very, very famous in his day, did a lot of incredible racing, did a lot of wins,
There's
he
a
was
movie
like,
about him, I think.
yeah, he's like the guy. So if you think about all the people that you would know from F1, like right now, everyone knows Lewis Hamilton,
Right.
right? Back in the day, everyone knew Michael Schumacher, right?
Yeah, Kimi Räikkönen. There's a few guys.
That are kind of
Yeah.
quintessential names that even someone like myself and like yourself that knows nothing about Formula
Right.
One,
Max
we're like, yeah,
Verstappen.
that
Yeah.
exactly. You're like, yeah, I know that guy's name, right? Senna was that guy, but he was, I think, and again, somebody's gonna correct me in the comments. I think he was in like the 70s and 80s because I think the original marketing with him was with the original Formula Ones. Like
Yeah. He was a Hoyer ambassador as well, which is kind of also neat.
exactly. So I think those watches were kind of his shtick, and that's where the Formula One collection really launched for Tag. And I think that's why it was so successful, is because it was marketed with him as like the ambassador focus for the brand at
Makes
that time.
perfect sense.
Yeah.
It's you see how many of those teal IWC chronos they sold?
Oh my gosh.
Like I was seeing pictures from racing events where you would just see people's hands in the stands like reaching upwards, and there was just a bunch of them just on everybody's wrist. And I was like, wow, IWC just cleaned up.
Yeah, I mean it's. I mean they're so engrossed with it. And how could you not be a Formula One fan? I mean IWC is the car of of Lewis Hamilton, right? Like it's the watch of Lewis Hamilton. So I mean,
Right. And that even has, I forget the name of the Mercedes, that little three-pointed emblem, but it has a bunch of those on it. Like there's all the tie-ins. So I could totally see why people go after that. And it's a handsome watch. I honestly really like it.
yeah, yeah. So Senna, he drove the Formula One car, was and it was the Marlboro car. It was a classic red and black and white Marlboro car
Interesting.
for Formula One. Yeah,
Very
there's
interesting.
so many documentaries and things about him. He's like one of the greats of the greats. He was Brazilian.
Yep. Yep. Next up, I believe you got one. That sweet little Movado.
I know.
Not a
I,
name you hear often on this show. Movado bringing the heat. What do you got for us there?
so this is a new watch from Movado, which is very interesting because we would not normally talk about a fashion watch brand on this. But recently, Movado did like an exclusive sell or recreation from what I understand, only available online. But they recreated their vintage chrono divers from the 1960s, 1970s. And the name's a little bit long, but it's the Movado Alta, ALTA, Super Sub C automatic. So this is a little bit large, but it's 43 millimeter. It's a vintage inspired chrono diver with the original retro Movado logo. It has an automatic chronograph movement. I don't know which movement it's based off of, but it does come with a 62-hour power reserve. It has a ceramic bezel with a diving scale on it. There's two variations. There's a black dial with a black ceramic bezel, and then my favorite, which is the white dial Panda with blue subdials on the chrono registers and in a blue ceramic bezel ring. And what's interesting about this watch, it's expensive. It's $3,995 US, but it comes in 904L stainless steel for both the case and the bracelet. It looks really good. Not a watch I would have ever expected from Movado to release, but I kind of want one. Now at $4,000, I don't know if I'm rushing out to get one, but guys, it looks pretty good. And I can imagine this on a nice navy blue tropic. I think they got something here. I think they got something here.
Yeah, this kind of looks like the newer Timex Q Chrono on steroids.
Yeah, it looks really good. And it's
It does.
200 meters water resistant. Like it's a diver's chrono.
Yeah, you had me at Diver Chrono, and it looks like they got some polished center links going on here.
Yeah, it's
Some,
Paulo Centerlinks, Chamfered lugs. Again, it's Movado, so I don't know how like precise and sharp the finishing is going to be. Again, I haven't seen this watch in person, but they're really trying to do something different here. It's got a little bit of Fotina on the dial, which
yep.
I don't mind. I think it looks really good. You have some nice radial subdial engravings on the chrono subdials. So there's a lot of visual interest here. And right now, I don't think that there's really a watch on the market from a contemporary brand that really looks like this, especially riffing those vintage diver chronos. I really haven't seen anything like this in a while. And the only time I've ever seen them are the original vintage Movado diver chronos that I see pop up on eBay or things like that. So this is kind of cool. They brought it back. The only hang up for me is going to be the size at 43. But, from the photos, it looks like it wears pretty small. The lug to lug doesn't look too terribly long. So I don't think it would be that much of an issue.
Yeah, and I've seen. I mean, at one point, Movado was considered a more. I don't want to say a more legitimate player, but from
No, they
a
were more a
from
luxury brand at
from
one
our
point for sure.
perspective, they were a respected horology house, I guess you'd say,
Yeah. Yep.
right? Because you see the vintage ones go for good money on the secondary market. Like
Yeah.
I troll a lot of vintage websites just for fun once in a while, just to see what's out there. And I'll see old Movado chronos, and they go for good amounts of money, several $1,000s,
Yeah.
and they're
Absolutely.
they're in
For sure.
demand, which is, I guess, it's cool. I mean, it's cool to see things from the past that were sort of bigger than what they are today. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, Movado became what they are. They still sell a ton of watches. I think they bought MVMT, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, I think actually, yeah, Movado Group acquired MVMT.
Yeah.
So Movement is part of them, but they're doing something different. I don't like that. Now, a lot of their stuff is going to be, of course, fashion oriented. This is a fashion watch brand. They had their museum watch that was kind of the one that everyone knows, the very Spartan black dial with just a giant sphere at 12 o'clock. And that kind of built their entire collection
Yeah, that's
of what
the
they sell today.
signature look of when you say Movado, right?
Exactly. But what's interesting is I've been looking at their website since I saw this Alta Subsea. They've been doing a lot more stuff that is mechanical driven, which is very interesting. And even some of these new museum pieces are coming in automatic. Like I can get one right now on a leather strap with the classic, Sphere at 12, a date, and it's $895 for an automatic. Which I think every collector does need some watch like this in their collection. That very quintessential classic cocktail piece.
Yeah, it's elegant.
It's extremely elegant. But for me, if I was ever going to buy one, it would only be a mechanical version because I think
Sure.
that's where it really hits. But the fact that they're doing that now and they're going back to mechanical movements, it's kind of impressive. And for me, there's certain watches that I think everyone should own, right? Like you look at like a Cartier tank, right? Like that's a watch everyone should own. But I hate the fact that the majority of tanks are not mechanical; they're quartz.
Yeah.
For me, at under $1,000 for something like this, even 38, 40 millimeters with a mechanical movement, that's cool. I think there's something very, very statement worthy about that. So I'm glad they're doing it. I think it's cool. I'd buy a mechanical Movado. I ain't afraid to say it.
Now, as we usually say on the show, more is better. We like that.
And looking for different stuff. I want to go to the meetup and have something different that people haven't seen before.
True that. Last up for new releases, Patek Philippe put out
Bringing fire.
quite literally
Big fire.
big fire. A pair of 5271s, 5271-11P, 5271-12P. The distinction here is that these are red and blue, and they are encrusted around the entire outer bezel of the watch in either sapphire or ruby.
Yeah.
So these are quite blingy. I'm usually not a big gem set person, but I think these are pretty handsome watches. They have Patek Philippe signature caliber, hand wound movement, column wheel with a horizontal clutch, by the way, not a vertical clutch, which is interesting, and a perpetual calendar module on top. Pretty neat though. Honestly, very clean watches. You get a moon phase at 6. You get a day, a date, day night indicator. You get pretty much everything you could ask for. I mean, the price tag also kind of says
Yeah,
that.
exactly. There is that too. There's like an
You are paying
astronomical
for
price
that.
tag.
I do believe it's $328,000 if you
Yeah.
got that on deck. But they're very handsome. You get like a midnight blue and a very fiery red, gradient dials. Just neat all around. Obviously, not really up our alley, but fun to dream about.
Oh, I mean, look, you call beauty where beauty is there, and certainly these are incredibly well built watches. They're aesthetically gorgeous. They're I love the red motif. I love the blue motif. There's certainly a very fiery, idea behind the design of these watches. It's a little bit more of a statement for Patek than what they normally put out, because you can see some watches like this that come out, but they're usually for like very high profile collectors or Arab sheikhs or stuff like that, right? Dignitaries, people that have that kind of money, and it's cool to see that these are being advertised a little bit more on the forefront. But regardless, heavy hitter for Patek. Not something that I'm going to run out to get because I can't afford it. But
I would
you know
trade
what?
my house.
But you know what? Somebody out there will, and I think it's an amazing watch for you to pick up if you have the opportunity. So
Yeah, agreed on that. Very cool. And I'm getting a bit of, let me date myself here. I'm getting a bit of Pokemon Red and Blue vibes here.
oh my gosh. I don't think Terry or not what's the guy that runs Patek these days? I can never remember his name.
Oh, I don't know. No, I do know. I have him in a meme somewhere. I can't remember his name.
Anyway, somebody's gonna man, I'm just gonna get blown up in the comments this week. But you know what? Somebody will comment on it. But you know what? I don't think he ever envisioned his masterclass timepieces ever being compared to Pokemon.
Is it Philippe Stern?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I was gonna say Thierry Stern, but that's somebody different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh no, he's in there too. President, honorary president, and Claude Penny or whatever CEO. Either
Okay.
way, I'm not really that involved in high end horology brands that I'm never gonna be able to afford. So, just a fun couple of watches, and
There you go. There you go.
take me back to the eighth grade.
There you go. I like it.
Speaking of eighth grade, that'll be a good segue into our topic here. So we're going sort of back in time mentally here, and I guess I'll let you introduce the topic because we kind of ran with something that you've been involved with lately. So why don't you take it away?
Yeah. So recently, and maybe they listen to the podcast, maybe they don't, but um, recently I've kind of gotten roped into good friends of mine finally getting the watch bug. After all the years that I've tried to push and chip away and try to get them excited about horology and watches, it looks like it finally happened. And it's kind of interesting for me because I've been, a collector for many, many years. And I wouldn't say I'm a seasoned collector, but I've been a collector for many years. I've been an enthusiast for many, many years. And I've seen myself go through, watch collecting. And it's really interesting to be looking at it with fresh eyes again from somebody's perspective that's just getting into the hobby and going from that moment of excitement all the way through the purchasing transaction phase, being able to relive that with friends of mine who this is their first time experience doing it is kind of interesting. And it's taking me back to those days where we've talked about before on the pod where you're so innocent and you just don't realize like what you're getting into. So, when I kind of proposed this topic tonight, I was focusing on, what is it like to go through that process again? How does it happen? And kind of what are the stages of getting into the watch game and ending up with your first purchase?
Yeah, and I can remember I was in the shoes of your friends and the two friends of mine who joined me, I don't know, probably 20 episodes back now. They were the ones who sort of pushed me along. And I just remember going from, is this a thing I could be a, a part of, right? Like, am I gonna commit to this? That's the
Right.
biggest, that's the
Right.
first step, right? And we joked about before the show, we joked about it being the hook,
Yeah,
right?
it's the hook.
Something has to catch you, something's got to get your juices flowing, right? And in this case, for me, it was my friends, but I mean, how many movies are based around loosely? I'm not going to say it's the watch is the plot of the movie, but it's clearly showcased in the movie, right?
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
Apollo 13, right? Your Interstellar,
Yep.
right?
Transporter, like all these different movies where
You go
where you
back to
see a watch that's a focus piece.
right, and then you go back to the Steve McQueens and the Paul Newmans, right? And you now, all right, now my juices are flowing. These are cool guys. I'm in, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's and I think that's probably why Tag Heuer decided to go with the Gaz
Yeah.
in this age. I figure enough people know who he is, and now he has I think he has the ear of the younger generation, so that would make sense. And I feel like people who are already into Tag Heuer, you don't need to hook them anyway. So I feel like the Gaz from that perspective was probably a good pick. So the hook is set. And then from there, what do you do? For me, I remember I made a forum login and I just went up and down the sales forum and the topics and looked at every single watch on the internet, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think once you have whatever impetus is going to get you started, whether it's a hook, whether it's a movie, an activation, an advertisement, whatever gets you excited to jump in and start really figuring stuff out, you know, it's going to happen. For me, it was the first watch that I really loved. I found something that I liked. It was gifted to me for a holiday. And ever since that point in time, I've never been able to take a watch on because I found something that I really, really, truly loved. I saw it in a window, and it was like that kid on Christmas moment where you just knew you had to have it, and when you finally get it, it's like, okay, it clicks. This is what I want, right? And I think the next step is you get all the excitement built up, and then you have to funnel that excitement into something, and it usually culminates in research. I think you start diving down the rabbit hole. You mentioned the forums. I myself was that same way. I was thirsting for information, and so I wanted to find out as much about what I was interested in as possible because nobody I knew was into this thing. I think for so many collectors, that's also the biggest hurdle is you find something that's very cool and you don't have anybody to share it with.
Right.
you know and so sometimes it can be kind of a lonely journey, like, is this kind of stupid, or is this something that I want to do, or what's going on? How do I find out information? And so you do make a forum account, you jump onto the internet, you do all these crazy things. For me, the other big thing I did is I would go to stores and try to find out information from people, you know as much as I could. And that was, especially back then, I was a little bit of a fool's errand, but it was interesting because I got to see, how things would work out.
Sure. And we talk all the time about our experience with the Bond Seamaster popping up in GoldenEye, the
Oh
video
yeah.
game, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, I was indoctrinated from what was that, sixth grade, right? I was
Oh,
like,
for
this is a
sure.
cool watch, right? And then you realize, oh, James Bond wore a cool watch.
Yeah.
Can I
A
wear that
very
watch?
cool
I can
watch.
wear that watch. And then that's where you start to think back and you're like, oh, I've always noticed these things. I just didn't know exactly what was going on. And I remember thinking, okay, I bet watches are expensive. And then I said, I don't know if they are $500 expensive or $5,000 expensive or $50,000 expensive.
Yeah.
I guess I'll find out.
Yeah.
Right. And then the interesting part from there was if I said to myself, well, I like that Blue Bond Seamaster. It Do they still make it?
Yeah.
Can can I
Can
get
I get
one?
it?
Yeah.
Yeah, can I
And
get one?
then do I want the version? I have to figure out, I have to take the temperature of the room here and figure out, is the version with the 007 secondhand cool or is that lame? Like, I don't want to be the lame-o who got the overly branded one when I could just get a plain old one and it'll be classy and classic and stylish forever. Or I could be the guy who got the movie premiere one and people would be like, nerd.
Yeah,
I don't want
yeah,
to be
yeah,
that guy unless it's super collectible, in which case I'm in, right?
yeah.
No,
Exactly,
but
exactly.
really, like you have to figure out that was always the thing for me. I remember when I was getting involved and I was getting into the real the darling pieces, right? The SKX, the turtles, and things like that. I was trying to figure out why certain ones were in higher demand and more expensive than others,
Yeah.
right? Why were people paying more for a J serial SKX,
Oh yeah.
right? Things like
Yeah.
it didn't make sense to me. I was trying to figure it out, and through time you do, and you might have to ask
But
some
it's a
people.
but it's a learning curve, and if you don't have anybody to
Yeah,
ask,
it's steep. That's a steep
then
curve.
then it's a challenge. And in some cases, it can be such an insurmountable challenge that you give up. And I think that that's where so many people end in their watch journey, right? This could be the make or break it moment. You find something that you like, you go into the research page, you start looking for information, you start asking questions, and either people are helpful and they give you the information or you're able to find it, or it's not, or it's too much to learn. And then it becomes an issue where you're just like, you know what, I don't understand it. And you just leave it there. And this is kind of where I got roped into the conversation with my friends because, I've been trying to push and push and push and get these people into watches for so many years. But for whatever reason, they were just apprehensive about it. And then in the last few months, I had a buddy finally, he got a promotion at work or was going through to get a promotion at work. So he's like, you know what? I'm finally going to do it. Let's go find something. And he ended up buying a Black Bay. And then that's when everyone's like, well, that's kind of cool. Like, why did you get this? And so the rest of the friend group is now like trying to all get watches at the same time, which is interesting. But this is where I got pulled into the conversation because they're like, okay, we're interested in this now. You've known about this for many, many years. Be our Sherpa, if you will, be our spiritual guide through the watch journey. And I think if you don't have that or you don't have a way to find it, it can be very intimidating and a lot of people might just give up.
Right. And that's where I kept getting hung up was there are certain watches you can't tell there's very different nuances about. Maybe the bezel at some point they switched over from aluminum to um ceramic,
Ceramic. Yeah, exactly.
and in renders you really can't tell the difference and you're like, why is this one 2 grand more? And you're looking at movements, you're looking at sizing, you're just trying to figure it out. And I remember a few times where I'd find a watch like for example the Planet Ocean, and I'm trying to figure out why this one's less expensive than this one, and I'm like, oh, this one is significantly smaller and people are not that into it. I get it now. But there were things I was like, why is this so different?
Yeah.
And there's just a ton of nuance. I mean, I remember Cole Pennington put out a picture, I think he put in a story and was like, this is like an under the radar classic or something, and it was some Seiko diver vintage model, and it had something wild along the bottom of the dial. It was like made in Japan, like movement Korea, case Taiwan, or something like that. Malaysia, maybe. I don't remember what it was, but it was 3 different countries on the bottom of the dial. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. But as a normie, you would never notice that, and you would never
Yeah.
find value in the nuance of that. And I think that's another part of the many layers of this hobby is finding the value in those nuances that some people would not even bat an eye at and say, why are you paying more for that? Where other people would. Like I see apparently the watch that you actually get when you are a Top Gun is not the same watch as they sell as the Top Gun with the little special marking on it from IWC.
Oh, I believe that. I believe that.
So, and I've seen, I think I saw it. I think it was today. I saw watches at Espionage that are pretty cool. I don't know what Blackwater is, but it was a Breitling with this
Yeah, yeah,
bear claw on it, and
yeah.
like the military stamps are so cool, but like you would never know why some of them are valuable and some of them are not, and that's probably because some of them are readily available to the public, and other ones you have to actually have some cojones to earn, right?
Well, and just so you know, Blackwater was probably one of the most infamous or notorious government contractor military organizations that was basically fighting during the Iraq and Afghanistan war.
Okay.
So a lot of guys would get pulled over, recruited for Blackwater, and there was a lot of good things that Blackwater contractors did, and a lot of things that were kind of suspicious or suspect. I'm not going to pass judgment on it, but at least you understand there was a government contracting agency that fought alongside, you know, troops in Afghanistan and Iraq.
But those are the types of things that you would never know. Why would somebody pay more for this? And you say, oh,
Because it's rare.
it has a cool marking, but yeah, you had to earn this. That's why,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
That's what makes it neat for me at least. Right. And then I know after I guess this research sort of honeymoon phase comes the anxiety phase, right? Where you're gonna have to eventually go to because everybody says, hey, you got to try it on, right? You got to try it on, or you got to try on a watch that wears like it or a watch that is akin to it. And
Yeah,
this is where the butterflies start going in the tummy.
yeah. Because now you actually have to make a commitment.
Yeah.
You have to make a commitment. And one thing, at one point, it was all in your head. There was no, no real buy-in. You didn't have to get in your car. You didn't have to drive down to the store and go meet somebody face to face and try it on. And now you do, because that's really the only way to truly know. I know that there's a lot of people that buy watches completely sight unseen online every single day, and that's certainly okay. If you've done that, cool, great. But the vast majority of people need to see something. They need to try it on. They need to experience it, and that's really, really, really important. So without that, you don't really understand the experience itself, and you don't really know if you're going to like something. You have to try it on.
Right. And I know some people can, with experience, buy things that sort of fit their mode when it comes to a watch that they sort of know what they're getting into already. And maybe there'll be little things that will make or break their experience wearing that watch. But for the most part, they know it will fit within certain parameters that it would only be a minuscule amount of judgment to make a call whether they're going to keep it or not.
Yeah, yeah,
But for people who don't know that stuff, right now you have to go and you have to, first of all, find a dealer. For some people, that's difficult enough. Find a dealer that has watches you want. Then you're going to have to find one that hopefully will give you a good experience, which is not everybody,
correct.
especially where I live. I mean, there's more of them, but you also have to be sort of choosy with who you're going to do business with at the end of the day. And then you have to make your approach, right? You're going to have to actually go through those doors, find a salesperson and say, hey, I want to do this
Yeah,
and see what happens. And I know that's a kind of a gut wrenching feeling. And it was funny when I had originally talked about finally making the commitment to go in. My friends were like, "Oh, let me loan you a watch to wear, so at least it looks like you pulled the trigger before, and nobody's going to try to, pull the wool over your eyes." And
it's so funny
I was like,
because
"Okay, okay."
that I literally did that to my buddy when he went into the store this past weekend to buy his watch. I literally gave him a Hamilton watch of mine to put on his wrist to actually wear in there, and it was I didn't give it to him because I thought that somehow it would make him look like I just wanted him to experience it, and then he ended up buying the watch. So
Yeah,
it was kind of interesting, but it's so funny that you mentioned that.
yeah. And I remember I went into I I didn't know anything, so we went to the mall, probably the worst place of all. Went to the mall. We have a in our mall we had a it was a Rolex boutique attached to a Torno, and that's
Okay.
where we went. And that was where I found the Tudor Pelagos that I ended up buying. And it was pre-owned, but I remember it was very clean. I tried it on, and I remember that was how the hook really got set. And I was like, well,
Yeah.
now I'm in trouble. And I remember talking to the salesperson, and she was very nice and very friendly. And we wound up, hitting it off and being very kind of just friendly about it. She was pretty young, so at the time I think I was 27, 28, something like that.
Okay.
So there was it didn't feel like anybody was looking down on me from like maybe like an age standpoint or something. Like I felt like I was buying something from almost like a friend. So that
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
nice. I gotta say it was
Yeah.
pretty
Not
good.
not a transaction.
Right. It felt like a good experience as opposed to you want to buy this? Like, all right, come over here. Come over here,
Yeah.
Sonny. So that was
Yeah.
good.
And that's the make or break moment for a lot of people in the retail experience, because a lot of these stores, especially nowadays, customer service has changed a lot, especially in lieu of COVID.
Yes,
And I feel like more people are less likely to help you because they don't really have to try anymore to buy watches. For
that
people to
too,
buy watches, like
certainly.
a lot of people just buy them because it's what they want. And very, very few people have to actually really work hard to make somebody excited about getting a watch. And I think that's a huge mistake from a retailer's perspective. No matter what, we should always be trying to encourage people, make them have a great experience because that's what brings them back. That's what keeps people engaged and wanting to come back and buy and share in the experience with you. I think that's really, really important. That said, so many times, and I think that was a big hurdle too for a lot of my friends because, my buddy who just bought a watch this weekend, going through the process, he went to several different retailers, and all the times he would tell me, he's like, hey, so this was the play by play. Had a guy who walked in and basically nobody talked to him for 10 minutes
Yeah.
because they assumed that he couldn't buy anything, which I think is so messed up. And that happens so often that it's really sad, but that's so many people's experience.
Yeah,
And
especially nowadays where you have, sort of the I don't know what you call them, the like the people who made crazy money in something, whether it was, stocks or crypto or something, and they wear like sweatpants every day just because they can.
yeah,
Like you see Mark Zuckerberg walking around in sweatpants and like sandals all the time.
yeah, I
Like
mean,
imagine he goes into a store and people are like, "Oh, this bum can't afford anything," and you're like, "Oh,
yeah, I mean, look at like somebody like Steve Jobs, right? He
yeah,
made the turtleneck and New Balance, sneakers cool, right? People like that. You really can't judge a book by its cover because you just don't know who's going to be able to buy something or purchase anything. And so many people have that experience where they get profiled,
yeah."
and it's really messed up because there's a lot of people who just get turned off from the whole buying experience because nobody takes them seriously, and that's really sad.
Right. So imagine I went to go in there, nobody talked to me, and I just walked right out and I said, "Well, I guess this isn't for me."
Yeah, right there, door closed.
Right?
It's too
No,
pretentious. Nobody wants to take me seriously.
no
This
bro
is an
dinky
issue.
because nobody wanted to help.
Yeah.
I almost wanted to, I don't know if that person even still works there, but I wanted to go back in there one day and be like, "Hey, do you know what happened because I bought that Pelagos from you?"
I started a meme page that became a global phenomenon.
You might follow me.
It's so funny. So then from there, I mean, the experience has to be good. And I think that that's certainly something that turns people on or turns people off, certainly. But I think the next thing, what would you say, bro? What would you think would be the next?
Well, I think from there you've tried it on. Now comes sort of the internal struggle, right? The mental gymnastics.
Yes. How do we rationalize it to ourselves? How do we justify making that purchase? Because all of a sudden, we've had the experience, we've tried the things on, we've liked what we've seen so far, we've gotten the hook a little bit, but now we have to come to the realization that we need to basically do the thing
Yeah.
and make the purchase. And that's where things get sometimes a little bit too real.
Yeah, especially if it's in a price range that's out of your comfort zone. I mean, I know
Oh
the,
yeah.
the Pelagos. I mean, I think it was a little over 3 grand. It was a bit of a gut check. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not an insurmountable amount of money. I had a job. It's okay, but like at the same time, I had never, aside from buying my car, which I had saved up a bunch of money for a down payment for months and months, like this was a an unnecessary purchase of an outdated technology that
Yep.
I didn't even know I was going to be attached to long term. So
it's
like,
a
yeah,
little
yeah,
bit
it
of
is
a
a bit of a
mental
gut check.
gamble, right? Like,
Right.
yeah.
So there's a lot of mental gymnastics that go into that, justifying the value, justifying shelling out that kind of money, taking out your card or cash or checkbook, whatever, and making that transaction. It can be a little nerve-wracking. I totally
Yeah.
get it. But I guess it's part of the fun, right? I guess it's part of the fun is being like, am I really going to do this? Am I going to do this? Am I going to jump? Right? It's like going off a diving board, right? You're 10 feet up and you're saying, am I going to jump? Am I going to leap off something that's 10 feet high into water that I know if I land wrong is going to hurt?
Yeah.
I remember my first time. I don't like heights, so that was a memorable moment for me.
Yeah, for sure.
But similar in those regards. So you're going through the mental gymnastics, and then I guess what you do before you go back to that AD is you're gonna have to look around and see if you can get it for cheaper online, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Right. You're gonna see if it takes a hit used, because that's gonna change your mindset, right? And then you're gonna see maybe I can get it gray market cheaper, like as far as like a Joma shop or somebody,
Mm-hmm.
which comes with its own set of double-edged sword, whatever. But you got to shop around. I guess bottom line, you have to, especially with things like this, you have to shop around.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I think, in the shopping around process too, you're also going to do that last minute review. You need the justification for yourself as well as part of making that mental
Yes.
gymnastics things happen. You're going to start looking at all the Teddy Baldessar videos on this watch that you can. You're going to start reviewing all the things that you can find. And of course, you're going to start looking for pricing to see if it's possible to get it somewhere else. But this is kind of the final steps, right? This is the last bit of things that are necessary to do before you finally make the big purchase happen. And I think we've all been there. And it's one of my favorite times. It's also one of my most nauseating times because it's like, okay, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, but I need to make sure that I'm doing the right thing first. Is it okay? Is it okay? Is it okay? I think I got it. Let's do it. You know?
I do know. And I remember I went to make a payment on it on my computer. I must have left it open. I remember my wife, who's my girlfriend at the time, was like, "What's that charge for?" And I was like, "None of your business."
Oh boy.
Again, at that time, there was I didn't have to justify it at that time.
Yeah, for
Now
sure.
maybe a little different, but I was like, it's just a little something I was saving my money for, and now I got to pay it off. So, but there does come that reality check when you're putting up that much money, and then after that, it's time to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Time to get down and dirty.
And
You
do
got
the
to do it.
deed.
It's make or break, and that's it could be the best decision of life. It could be the worst decision of your
Yep.
life.
Yep. I think most of us would probably agree that it's been an amazing decision, but also not without its own heartaches. We all wish we would have a little bit more money in our pockets without all the watches that we spent.
You might have seen that meme this week
Yes, I did. I did.
with Ralph Wiggum, and he's like, I was like, if you imagine if you just stopped at SKX, how much money you'd have? And I was like,
Yeah.
no, I mean, something I
I
think
don't I
about.
don't I don't want to think about it.
I
I
don't want to
don't
think
want to
about it.
think
It's
about it.
something that crossed my mind time to time, but that's real. But
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to think about it. That's a that's a dark place I don't want to go to.
but yeah,
I
I
just
mean,
want to be happy and buy more watches.
yeah, I realize maybe my experience has been a little strangely different from other people, but I have to say I've definitely had a lot of interesting doors open, not opportunity wise, just interest wise, as far as things I've gotten into or things I've explored because of making an unnecessary luxury purchase. So I guess
Yeah.
it's definitely made life a little more interesting. So I guess I can never really regret it in that regard.
Oh, I don't regret it one bit either. I don't. I think it's certainly not without its financial burdens, but I think it's been one of the most extremely cool experiences, and we've talked about this before. You and I have both done incredible things. We've met incredible people. We've done incredible experiences, and it's all because of something that's archaic that we decided to buy, wear, and get involved with. And I think that that's really really interesting.
Yeah, and I guess that brings it to your big moment of, there's a show that my wife watches called Love It or List It, where I mean
Yeah.
this it's a little different of a situation, but the concept applies is that you're either gonna love this thing or you're gonna put it on Chrono 24. Right. But I mean the show is about people who fix their house up and then they either have
Yeah.
to stick with it or buy a new one, and somebody
Mm-hmm.
shows them
Mm-hmm.
both. But in this case, so you have this watch, now it's time to decide, is this my long-term baby, or am I not that thrilled with it and I'm going to move it on? Because let's face it, servicing a watch is not that cheap.
No,
But
not at
you are
all.
committing, if you're going to keep it that long and you're going to want to take care of it, because God forbid you do have to sell it eventually. You do want to be able to say, I took care of this thing, I serviced it properly. Everybody, I always get a little leery of if I'm buying a watch that's in excess of 5, 10 years old, and it's service history unknown. All right, well, at least if you're buying from a generally if you're buying from a website or a secondhand dealer, they've had it serviced by their watchmaker at least. Who
Or at
you
least
hope,
looked at. At
yeah,
least looked at.
who you hope is competent, but still, at least there was effort put into there. And I'm not going to say that that's a great thing because I've had even my homie from DC Vintage. He's pointed out like the eBay guarantee says might have secondhand parts in it,
Yeah.
even though it's an authenticity guarantee.
Yep.
So like there are some gray areas and a little blurred lines here and there with depending who you're dealing with. But I would always say it's better to have been looked at than service
Then
history
not. Yeah,
unknown.
for
I don't
sure.
I don't know if this was fished out of a Cracker Jack box type of
Where
situation.
the movement was swapped. I've seen that before.
Yeah. Oh,
That's gut wrenching.
yeah. I mean, some things you wouldn't know unless you opened it up and saw the serials matched, right?
Well, not even that. Like there was a guy who when I was working at the store, there was a guy who bought a 300 meter from somebody online, and he brought it in for his first service, and we cracked it open, and it wasn't an Omega movement; it was a Seiko movement.
Wow.
Literally, the entire movement was swapped. I mean, like, what do you do?
So could now I know some people will not do business with something that they consider to be counterfeit. Now, this is not a counterfeit watch. Did they set him up with a
So,
new
so
movement?
it, no, I mean, so basically, and this is the policy of a lot of brands. If there's no way to prove the provenance of it because there's no movement internal, then they don't consider it as authentic,
Okay,
even though the
understandable.
case and bracelet are authentic.
Understandable.
And that's even true of other manufacturers. Like there was a company way back in the day. Some of our older listeners may have heard of it, but there was a company called Ashford Watches, and their company policy was whenever they would take these watches in or they would buy them, they would intentionally remove the serial numbers from both the movement and the case.
Okay.
Now, why? I have absolutely no idea, but I can't imagine it's for legal reasons or for authenticity reasons. But their company policy was they would super discount these watches, but they removed all provenance that it even existed. They would literally etch lines through serial numbers
Wow.
on both the movement and the case. And as far as I remember, and this may be different now, but Omega's old policy was if the movement number was removed from the case, but it was still visible on the movement, they would service it. But if it was removed from the movement, they couldn't. Or if it was
Interesting.
removed from both, they couldn't. Something like that. I don't really remember exactly, but something like that.
Yeah, I always wonder about that because I know company to company, whatever, it's all different. But I imagine you have a
That
300
would
meter
be
with
just
a
the
Seiko
the the
movement in it.
worst heartache ever.
Right. And so I mean hopefully, and I don't think that's like as common as we hope it is not. But that's what they always say, man. Buyer beware. It's a real thing. And
Yep.
obviously, that's the kind of the double edge, the rub of the forums, right? You're kind
Yeah.
of taking somebody's word for it. I don't know. I'm not sure. I've even seen because I like to peruse once in a while the deals gone wrong section for my own entertainment,
Oh
sort of a
God.
sadistic
No,
trait of
that's
mine.
horrible. That's horrible.
But I've seen deals where it was like, very well regarded, trusted person scammer. And I'm like, oh, damn.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know. I don't know if desperation's a real thing. Situations get weird, times get tough.
I mean, what was that famous YouTuber that went dark?
Horology house.
Yeah. Horology House, baby.
Yeah.
I mean, there you go.
So, and I guess if you're keeping it, now comes the fun part. How long is too short to start looking at your next watch? That is the golden question, right? The age old mystery.
Yeah, I don't know. I I would say for me, it depends on the price of the watch. Like if you buy a big boy purchase watch, maybe you wait a year or two to do something about it or to look at something new. But I mean, I had a buddy of mine who just bought that Black Bay a couple months back, and he already was looking for pulling the trigger on a new watch, like literally just this weekend. And it's maybe been a few months, maybe. So I think it just depends on the person, depends on your financial resources and what you have, access to. But at the end of the day, I think it just comes up to the person, and what you want.
Yeah, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think it's
No,
very person to person. My advice to people who I know personally who buy their first, I'll throw the quotes up, real watch. I honestly just tell them to just enjoy it. I say you can look at other stuff. I said, but just enjoy that. Just figure
yeah,
out what you love about this watch, what you don't like about this watch. Just go through the phases of wearing it every single day and
and love it.
what gets you going, what turns you off, because that's going to be big in your next few purchases. And going down the line, buying things, you'll make less mistakes, I think.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
eventually
you
you're going to
start
have
to
to
find out
go,
what you like. You
eventually
start
you're
to find out
going to
what you
have to
like.
go in a completely different direction where like you might say, I'm kind of into Panerai now. And that's like a
Yeah.
way off the reservation watch for you. And you have nothing to compare that to. And I guess that's understandable. But if you're buying watches in the sort of 38 to 42 range and you're keeping it to, I don't know, three handers or divers or things like that, like you can't go too astray. Whereas if you're buying, a chunky chronograph or you're buying something vintage or you're buying something sort of out of the ordinary large, like a big pilot or a Luminor, like then things get a little hazy. But I tell them to find out what they really love about the watch first and what they really
Yeah.
don't love about it. And that can sort of mold their decision making going forward.
I agree. And I think that's perfect and sound advice.
Yeah, take it from somebody who made that mistake, right? I right after I got that Pelagos, I was like, oh man, Tudor is such a great brand. I was like, I think I'll just go and pick up a North Flag. Like a couple months
Just go
later,
full throttle, full
yeah,
throttle.
I again, I feel like I want to write a memoir about my stupidity in watch collecting and just have it be like the playbook of what not to do. But
I'd read it.
yeah, I think it would be fun to be honest. But I remember going through that myself, and I remember getting that watch and saying to myself, "Oh damn." At the time, I wasn't as savvy. I didn't know as much. I just assumed that if you bought a watch from the same brand, they came with the same fancy bells and whistles. So when I got it, I was like, oh, this bracelet doesn't quick adjust. Because obviously the Pelagos bracelet is amazing. It's got the quick adjust. You pull out the spring, you pop it right back in, bang, micro
Yeah.
adjust it. I was like, oh, this doesn't have that. Oh, that sucks.
Yep.
Right? Like
Yep.
again, I was a newbie. I didn't know. I didn't know any different. I
Yeah.
didn't know better. So
I mean, and that's why we record this.
we do.
We
We
want
do.
we want people to share those experiences, and guys out there, if you're listening to this and you are newbies and or you want to share your story, hit us up, message us.
Yeah, we talk with people all the time.
There's a lot of people that DM us on the regular, and if you're one of those, thank you for your comments and your DMs and your engagement. And if you're new, drop us a line. We love talking with you guys. Bro or I will either respond. Bro's usually a little bit better than me because he's probably updating his own account at the same time he gets
Yeah,
the
spend a fair amount
notification.
of time on the phone.
A little bit more than me when it comes to that, but one of us will drop you a line and message back. We always try to do that, keep you guys engaged, and as you guys have known before, for those of you who have listened, sometimes we'll turn your questions and feedback into episodes. So
Yeah,
um,
or give you fatherly advice. That was this week.
give you fatherly advice, exactly. Fatherly advice for your first watch indoctrination voyage.
And then I guess last of all is what's my next watch,
Oof.
right?
Yeah.
Do you go? Here's always the tough thing for me because then you start to fancy yourself. Am I a collector? And if I am, do I go with a theme or do I just pick and choose? Right? Some
Yeah.
people are like, I really like divers. I'm gonna be a diver collector. Right? There are people out there who just collect Speedmasters, for example.
Yeah.
Right? There's enough nuance there to. I mean, there's a ton, but am I going to be a person who I just collect this type of watch? Am I going to be a pick and choose? Am I going to be okay, I'm going to get a very athletic and colorful diver, and then I'm going to go pick up something from Cartier. Then I'm
Yeah.
going to go grab something from Panerai, right? Am I going to be all over the damn place? I don't know. You sort of have to make that decision, look in the mirror and say, I guess, who am I? Right. That's kind of the
Who
interesting
am I? Who am I?
as a collector. Oh, I'm a
Yeah.
collector now, right? But
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's one of those things that you can only really come to that conclusion once you've enjoyed that first watch. When you know what you want, what you don't want, and you've gone through that process. And I think the next watch purchase is really an introspective look as to, okay, this is my first experience. I did this, this, and this. Maybe I would change something about the experience. Maybe I would change something about what I got. And maybe that leads to a different type of purchase in the future. So many of us start out with dive watches or sports watches of some sort. And then, you start getting the itch. Well, maybe a dress watch is in order, or maybe a vintage is in order, or something like that that gets you, into that niche aspect. And I think that's really important. But I think really for most people that comes after that first watch purchase when you start to think back to what you would do differently. And that's the process for me.
I think that's a process for me as well. And looking back, I think that's the advice I would give to my former self is just take time.
Take time, yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that would be great advice because at the time you could have picked up, a used sub $5,000, I think. So I
I
don't know
don't
if
even want
take
to think
time
about
was a
those days.
wise decision, but
Take time enjoying what you're getting into. That's
yes,
that's more
enjoy
so.
the process more than anything. Enjoy
Yeah.
the experience,
Yeah, absolutely.
right?
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So I'm sure there are other levels of Dante's Inferno that we haven't touched on, but I think we mapped this one out pretty good. So I
Yeah.
think with that we can put a cap on this episode. Thank you all for listening. As always, we will catch you next week. Schmitty, be good.
Thanks, guys.
Peace.